So one of the things that I want to talk about is socioeconomic status. It's a term that we hear all the time. And when we were talking about how to operationalize socioeconomic status as a variable, for instance, in social research, we were saying that you might look at a number of things like wealth or educational attainment or type of job. There's so many ways that we can try to operationalize it. In other words, figure out how to measure it. So because we're talking stratification, it's time now to define what socioeconomic status is. And a general definition is one's socioeconomic status is that individual's position in that system of stratification. I had to stop Alexa from making noise. So if I'm talking socioeconomic status, I'm generally talking about one's position in that system of stratification. Let me open the whiteboard here. And essentially, I am saying that socioeconomic status is a measurement of one's wealth, their education, their occupation, and their income. And you can see in general that that status, the position where you are for either one of those variables will affect the position where you are with any of the other ones. So first, let me make some distinctions between income and wealth. Income is the money that a person earns from work or investments. It's actual money. Wealth, on the other hand, is the value of that money, the value of the money and the assets that a person has from example, their income or their salary or any inheritance. Um, and we'll come back to why that distinction matters. Down here, when I talk occupation, I do want to make some more distinctions here about one's status in terms of their occupation, and then what I can talk to you about as prestige. You know what? I've got the whiteboard open, but for a minute, I want to share my screen. So let me figure out how to turn this off. This is a fairly old image. It doesn't so much matter the year of this image. It's from the 1990s, from the General Social Survey, which is a large scale survey that is collected from thousands and thousands of people from an organization that so that we can get some sense of people's opinion about things from year to year. The National Opinion Research Center does this every year and then makes this data available to everybody. This, just for the sake of an example, is the score that people will give or the data that they've collected in terms of the prestige that people would give to each one of these occupations. Some of these things are, like surgeon. We can see in this case that the prestige score is high. 87. It doesn't matter for what we're talking about, what that 87 represents, except that we can see that these occupations are ranked from high prestige to low prestige. We're not surprised that surgeon and astronaut and lawyer are at the top of the list, or that street corner drug dealer or fortune teller or panhandler are at the bottom of the list in terms of prestige. When you ask people their opinion or the esteem that they would give to someone, by definition, prestige is the respect or recognition or regard for one's social position. We're not surprised what this list has on it in terms of prestige for different types of occupations. So we know that doctor and lawyer and astronaut and surgeon, those things are going to be pretty high to the top. If you look at it though, college professor falls right under lawyer. A college professor is an educator, but you have to keep searching and find and keep going down until you get to high school teacher at numbers at with a score of 66, just tied with registered nurse. And you have to keep going, until you get at with a prestige score of 55 nursery school teacher, which means even educators don't carry the same amount of prestige or the same amount of respect or recognition or regard for their social position. In this case, the prestige that comes with their particular occupation. We know when we're looking at this that not only are we talking about the prestige or the respect that comes from a particular position, but we know that this is correlated with the kind of money that somebody can make, their income that they might get from each one of those positions. So let me get back to the whiteboard. So we know that income is going to just be the money that you get from your job or from your investments. And we know that wealth is the value of the money and the assets that a person has. And we've just looked at occupation, particularly in the way I did this earlier in another. I don't want to move my little arrow, although that's pretty cool. We see that also prestige gives us some sort of additional understanding between income and occupation. But here's why wealth matters, and it matters if a particular one of those jobs or occupations that help us earn a particular income matters. It's because wealth can be passed on. And this is why when I draw this understanding of socioeconomic status, I tend to draw it in a cyclical way because it's going to have an impact on the next thing up. Wealth can be passed on. Sometimes what gets passed on through wealth is one's prestige, for instance. If you have a parent who's a surgeon or an astronaut or even a college professor, that prestige that comes with that particular occupation, in addition to the amount of money that that person might be able to make, which says something about the way that they can invest or the way that they can save or the way that they can make purchases. Essentially, what is the value of the money that they have, the value of the assets that they're able to accrue over time? Prestige is one of those things that wealth can pass down. Wealth obviously can pass on economic capital, the ability to save more money, to have more investments, to buy a home and pass down a home. But the other thing that gets passed through wealth is cultural capital. That's like the exposure that you get to, if I am a college professor, things that happen at colleges, a panel that happens at college, a lecture that happens at college, free tuition for certain classes at college. If I'm an astronaut, I get to visit NASA and I get to look behind the scenes, right? So sometimes that cultural capital provides you with cultural exposure and maybe even entry into institutions that other people don't necessarily have entry into based on the occupation that you have and the kind of prestige that it carries. It gets, again, some of that prestige capital happens if you are the child of an astronaut or the child of a surgeon, then some of the prestige that comes with that occupation, that label follows you where you're going. It might even be the thing that allows you to be introduced to someone. That's your summer internship, for instance, or the ability for you to ask questions to people that you might not be able to, that you might not generally have access because you get to borrow some of that prestige and some of that access. And also general social capital, not just the prestige of your job, but in some cases, even legacy admissions to some of the top institutions. If your parent is a graduate of Harvard, for instance, then that might help you in your admissions to Harvard. If your parent is a surgeon, then medical schools might pay a little bit more attention to your ability to make the case about your ability to get through medical school. Of course, you're going to have mentors. You're going to have someone who knows what this is like. And so that social capital, that trust into you and what it is that you can do comes with where your parents are. So that wealth, we know, is the value of that income, but the value of that prestige in the ability to pass it on to others, right? This is why when we started talking statuses in the very beginning, this question of what is ascribed and what is achieved. And socioeconomic status is one of those tricky things because you're ascribed your socioeconomic status at birth, and it is something that you achieve later on. But where that line is and how much that achievement is based wholly on your own achievements individually, or the kind of position that you're situated, ascribed in that socioeconomic status. Again, it is the individual's place within the system of stratification. And the moment that you are born, you have a socioeconomic status that is very much dependent on the socioeconomic status of your parents. So then you've got wealth leads to the kind of education choices that can be made for you or on your behalf, the kind of occupation then that may allow you to have as you get older, the kind of income that you're able to earn, and not just in terms of dollar amount, how much money you can have or how much money you can get from your investments, but because your income is directly related to the occupation that you have and the prestige that comes with that, and it gets added to the kind of wealth that you generally have that ultimately you can continue to pass on. When we were talking about those principles of stratification, one of the things that we said is that it's not just about economic positions, or it's not just about economics. It's about beliefs and it's about values. We've put a lot of um, belief into education as the way that someone is able to sort of make their lives better. When does that socioeconomic status begin to be attached to the thing that you do? Well, when you get old enough to go to school or choose a college, for instance. But where those options are available to you are directly related to the socioeconomic status or the position that you have in that stratification system from the moment that you are born. So this is why we care about socioeconomics. This is why when you start any new thing, we tend to ask questions in survey form or general basic information. We tend to ask questions about your parents' socioeconomic status. Where do they work? How much money do they make? Do you own or rent your house? How much college education do your parents have? Because it says something about when and where you enter into the system. Okay, you're going to see this a lot, this conversation or this circular motion, because it's really important. That's all for this video, though. Thank you.